What I'm going to show on this video is how to turn a used EBC disc. This goes on a GS 1100E. Turn that used, kind of shabby looking, into this in about an hour. It's a relatively simple, straightforward thing you can do to any disc. Upgrade the appearance and possibly upgrade the braking at the same time. But the first thing I want to do, I want to share some of the technology that we've worked on for the last month or so, maybe 2 months, about our camera mount. So I want to go out to the garage and show some of the things that we've made. We've made changes and updates to the camera mounts, and then we're going to do the discs. Now, one of the things that, well, one of the little projects we have for today, this is a no riding day, so we're going to do some maintenance in between going to get the baby and some of the errands Karen has. This is an important thing, an important concept to have. I've made a lot of these camera mounts to put the camera in various positions. Well, what happened is when I made these out of 1/8" aluminum, I had a lot of this vibration. It's called resonant vibration. And this would do this. I don't know if you can even see that moving. Well, what's happened is I made the piece out of thicker material. I don't know if this is 1/4" or 3/16", but it's thicker material anyway. I bought a piece in Lowe's, polished it, made the bracket. And because these, in essence, are diving boards, but I want to put this camera mount up here. So when I check the footage of the ride from the previous day, and I always do this on a widescreen TV, because the widescreen TV, the sound is different and the picture is a lot clearer. Well, what happened is I noticed at certain RPMs, and I tried to look down at the tach, and it was probably at 7 or 8 or 10 grand. There's some point at which this starts going like that, and it stops. And then you go down in speed, and it'll go through that range again. Well, to make that better, to improve it, and I'm using basically some model airplane technology. When you balance a model airplane propeller, sometimes it'll vibrate at 10,000 RPM or 12 or whatever. And when you change the balance, you can put it a little bit out of balance. Then it goes to 6,000 or 4,000 or 8,000. But it's a resonance. It only vibrates at that certain RPM. So what I'm going to try to do is get a little piece of rubber and jam it down in here, because that'll make this more solid. See, this is still just a little bit of a diving board. But I'll go through believe me, I've got plenty of stuff to go through here. Plenty of little rubber parts and little screws and bolts, and if I have to, basically I can go machine something too. Or another thing I could do is just make a piece, an L-shaped piece that goes off here and bonded to that. That's one of the little projects for today, and that's something I think everybody, can be aware of. That'll change the resonance, and what I hope it'll do is put the resonance, it'll be at 15,000 or 2,000 or 800. Something, I want the range to be like, with this bike, you usually ride in 5,000 or 6,000 RPM. And when you're going through the gears, you're at 11,000. So, but I know right now that's in the wrong resonant range. So that's one of the things I'm going to work on today during this work day. I have a little maintenance day here. Now, another thing I did today, it's a little maintenance day. Maybe this is going to go across a few days. I took the discs off of this. This is the donor bike and actually, because Ray is going to be here tomorrow, or over the weekend, he's coming up from Florida. He actually was with me. We went out to Philadelphia, and we bought this bike I think around Philadelphia. I don't remember exactly. It was Pennsylvania anyway. And what had happened was, if I remember right, it was a couple of years ago, what happened was we got this in the back of his minivan. Now, if anybody's ever tried to put a real motorcycle, the 500-pound bike in the back of a minivan, it's a challenge. I don't remember if we had to take the handlebars off or what. But anyway, getting the discs off of that, I did that because I want to polish them. And I want to do some maintenance on them. I've had the discs on the other bike for about 2,000 miles. They were better than the stock ones. But now what's happened, when I did the restoration on this bike, I wanted to have the stock ones, just for the look of having the stock parts on the bike. But now these have 40,000 miles on them, and you can see they're really scuffed and worn, and they got gouges in them and parts where they're not gouged, and oh God, they're a mess. But another thing for within the next couple of days, I want to polish the discs, and it's nice to have a donor bike. We actually have two of these, and both of them have a title too. It's nice to have that I can just swap these out. I have 3 other sets of discs, and this is a funny story about these Suzukis, and this year is not unique. This goes back into the 80s. The 2 things that are wrong with these discs on this era bike is they're not floating. So this disc, once it warps even a little bit, is a problem. You have that lever pumping thing, which the modern discs, and I've showed this on a video already, you can spin these spools and make them a lot better. There's no spools on these discs. Well, the ones I'm going to replace these with, the EBC rotors, they have spools, so they're floating discs. So once I do the polish and clean it up, I really would like to have the stock parts, but right now those brakes have gotten to be marginal anyway. And no, this bike is a heavy bike, and we're riding. Last ride we went with Mark and Turbo Steve. We're using the brakes, and these things are getting hot, and by the end of the day they're cooking. So, and they're not as good, anywhere near as good as the brakes on a modern bike. This isn't even a modern bike, and the brakes are better. Well, it's 10 years newer than this one. But anyway, replacing those brakes, I want to show how I go about polishing them as part of the, part of this little work day. I'm trying to lay out, see what I try to do is I try to lay out little jobs that, and by the way, this little camera mount worked perfect because it's short. See, anytime you make a camera mount, if it's short down here, if I made this come up 2 inches, it turns into a diving board. It doesn't do that all the time, but there'll be ranges where it happens. Now the helmet mount, your head is a good vibration dampener, but even with this, sometimes what happens is as you take this little piece out, let me show this trick. This little piece comes out, and after pushing it back 20, 25 times, what happens? It gets some slop in it. Well, the way to get around that is take it out, put a piece of black tape under it, and then force it back in, and it tightens it right back up, and you don't even know the tape is there. That's another good little trick. So all this experimenting we did with camera mounts. Now another one, as I'm looking at things I wanted to do, I made this original one. This one looked real nice. That one worked perfect. This one, because it's short, it worked perfect. I thought that was perfect. And here's the reason it is, because on this bike, the vibration level is totally different. If I put this mount on the red bike, it doesn't work as well as it does on this bike. But even though that's thin, but that's another thing for an upgrade. Even though it's thin, I'm going to make it out of thicker material. I have a piece left. The RD, the back footage, you do have some vibration because the seat is rubber mounted. The seat on this bike is rubber mounted. The one on a handlebar, and this is the thing to always remember, when it's short, so there's not much resonance, but there is vibration because it's a 2-stroke. So you're always dealing with that resonance thing. And I thought I'd just pass this information on. Now, what I've learned in the past couple of months. This one I noticed because it was too low, and I put this little piece of bar stock in there. So what happens now, when it was down on the cap, I was seeing too much of the windshield. Now that it's raised up, it has a little bit of resonance. So I know one of the things I did is I put this rubber piece underneath the master cylinder to stiffen this up. So, and this is just a rubber bushing. It's not a big deal, but it killed about 90% of that. But anyway, the next thing I want to do, I'm going to go, and I only have a limited time today. When you have a lot of bikes registered and you're riding them, it's always, in my case anyway, I'm always trying to plan out my work list here and what I want to do. And it looks like, and then look at the list and take the highest priority item off of them. I have 4 tires coming this week. These bikes are, for some reason, I need to put 4 tires on in the next month or so. And I'll do it one by one as the weather, we have bad days, hot days, or whatever. But the next highest priority thing is to swap out these discs, and that's what I want to do right now. And it's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar. Our garden that Karen and I both enjoy. We got a red rose up there. Some Gabera daisies down here. But the thing that happens is one flower blooms, the next one dies out. One blooms, the next one dies out. And so we got some big ones. These are going to be ready to bloom. Wow. And we've got some of those. They came back from last year automatically. A lot of the roses by the pond. But it's just like a motorcycle. There's always something to do in the garden. Between the maintenance on a motorcycle, the maintenance on the garden, and the baby. Keeps me pretty busy. And the first thing is I've gotten these discs already have been used for a couple of thousand miles. And I want to thank Pokey again for getting these for me for their EBC discs. And they've been sitting in the garage for a couple of years too in the time that I've not used them. But the big thing is they're floaters. What that means is these rivets have a little bit of clearance that we're going to spin each one of these. Make sure they're clean at some point in this restoration. And I want to polish in here. I just want to have this side polished as nice as I can. And then we're going to clean all this goop off. And this is just stuff from sitting in the garage. What happens is where the brake pads sit together, moisture and dust build up and it just turns into that. We have a tool for cleaning that up. And basically just like on a cylinder you have that hone, we have a material that takes that right off and does a nice job. Now these little 3M pads, I just wanted to show this what these are. I call them 3M pads. They're not. They're bogus ones you buy in Harbor Freight for about, I don't know, about $3. This is what they look like. They come with a little mandrel, and you get the mandrel, which I already have in the drill press. They come 3 different ways: rough, medium. I only like to use the ones that they're green. They're the smoothest ones. They come 2 sizes. This I think is a 3-inch. They come like this, a 2-inch, I'm sorry. And you buy 5 of them at a time, and believe me, these are worth their weight in gold when you're doing a restoration. Super, super handy to have. Well, for right now, I put the drill press on its fastest speed. I've got the smoothest of the pads in here. And let me just go get the disc. And I want to take one cut on the disc and just see, because this is the only area I want to go right up around here, and this gives me a lot of control when I'm doing this. And it's a little time consuming doing this. Just do one little spot. This will get most. See what they do. It's no secret what they do. They glass bead this because that takes out any machining or casting marks. And it's, if you look at the other side, it's really rough. But you don't really see this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time back there. But you can see right away what those pads do. Here's a part they didn't do, and right here is a nice smooth. And this will be able to polish then. So the trick is I have to be real careful and not get this all scuffed up. I want to get as close as I can, but I don't want to go up and grind into the buttons. Now, as you can see, I'm running the edge of the pad right up to the button. I do it in this dimension. You got to do this in pieces. There's really no way that I know of. And then you have to do this side to get up against the button in this dimension. And it takes, the big thing with any polishing operation is just take your time. A good polishing job just takes time. The good news is it costs almost no money to do these type of things. It just takes time. And I think when you're done, number one, it makes the maintenance of the bike, wiping it off, cleaning it, so much easier when you don't have any flat black or you don't have any parts on it that are sand cast or rough. You can see it doesn't take long and it starts to come right up. And now we got to start working on this middle section next. Now some of the spots on doing a disc like this, because of the way the drill press is made, you can't really get in there the way you should or the way you'd like to. So what I do is just put it in the drill. And I need to get another pack of these. What happens with these, they're relatively inexpensive and they wear out quickly. So if you don't have a pack of them handy, it's like using up old sandpaper. Sometimes it's just not worth it. You get this in there. And a lot of times, you know, you can cheat yourself by not having a fresh pad in there. Anyway, these work real good. Again, the point I want to make is, and I just want to show this is really time consuming. I don't want to let the camera run for 2 hours, but what happens, you see results pretty quick. Right here, you can see we're starting to get it. I'm going to go around the whole thing and then in this area here, and then we'll start the actual polishing. But this gets the metal nice and flat. And see up here, I've got a spot I missed. To get this all flat is step one, and then the polishing goes on from there. Now, as we start the second part of our restoration, you can see all these little bad areas here. Now, part of the reason Suzuki had this problem back in the 80s, and many bike dealers, bike manufacturers did, the metallurgy wasn't good, and they didn't do floating rotors. That just wasn't part of the picture. So this should be, when we actually get these really as clean. I've gotten all of the stuff off I can. This will be ready for some polishing. But just having them cleaned up like this, even if this was all you did, this would be a giant upgrade. And of course, spin the buttons. This in itself would be a big upgrade. But getting that inside polish will just add the cherry on a sundae, I hope. And needless to say, you know, did the back too. The hub I'm not going to really see, I'm not going to deal with. But by getting all of these little scratches out, what that's going to allow the new pads, and we're going to put new pads in, it's just going to seat right in there. Hopefully we'll have a nice big upgrade to braking on that bike in the next couple of days. Now, what I always try to do in the course of restoring anything like this, or trying to bring it back to where it was a little better than new, I always have I call it my little, these are tools that I've used. Actually, I bought this one to do Vince's wheels. We never got to do them. And some of these that remove paint and remove whatever. Actually, this is a really good one here. This is one I'm for final polishing. These little fur ones are really good. But anyway, the point I made is if you have a bunch of these little, like these little wire brushes, and I always save the old pads because there's always something I can use them for. I'm grinding down a lawn chair or something that I don't care if they're perfect. But this one is real handy. Now, I use this one to get in here, and it gets in those areas. And I have a real big one. It's a really soft wheel that was great for getting in around that area. And that area would be very difficult to do in some other way. But the best one, and this one here that I've used, this is just like a 3M pad. Gets rid of a lot of the scratches. We'll be ready to start polishing this real soon. And again, these are all, if you're going to restore an old motorcycle or old furniture or whatever, just having these bins with all the things, because a lot of times you have to try 4 or 5 different ways of removing the paint or the finish. This has always been good. This would be good if you were doing this by hand. You could get in there and all the little nooks and crannies around the buttons. But if we have the tools, this was a great little one. This is another one I wanted to show from Harbor Freight. What this is good for is you can get in, there's just no end to the amount of little areas you can do with this. It's a priceless tool. Anyway, the good news here is none of this is big money, but the jobs you can do with it, and you can, I know a new set of discs that I've priced them at anywhere between $300 and $400, and then they come with some factory finish on them. Well, we want something just a little nicer if possible, and we don't want to spend any money at all. That's the key. Let me just show how quick this compound is going to cut. It's a good idea to wear gloves, a good idea to wear eye protection, that's for sure. And as a last thing, when this part starts getting hot, I have a set of old motorcycle gloves. And you want to get it just to the point where it's slowing down the wheel, but not, you don't want to do this, where you're actually stopping the wheel. You want the wheel to work. Just at the point you're putting the resistance on it. And what will happen, and you can see that it doesn't take long. And now, of course, we're going to do this whole thing off camera. This will take probably an hour, maybe longer, but I'll try some of the other compounds, see if they're any better. But basically, when we're done, we want the part, except for the disc area. And even if you do polish some of the disc, because we have new pads, we're going to have to break them in. It's going to take a little while, maybe 100 miles or so. Be gentle with the brakes in the beginning. They'll come in fine. I even want to get the edge cleaned up, even though that's something you probably, minor detail, as long as I have the equipment out to do this. When we're all done with this, of course, I'll take a look at it side by side with the one we haven't done yet. And then it's up to you to decide if you think it's worth the hours you put into this. What I'm hoping for is that these brakes, I'll get another 40,000 miles out of these. And I know those GS engines easily go 80,000. Tim's went over 80,000 in fact. So, if you can imagine, it wasn't that long ago, and this is a whole different part right now. Whole different part. It's just a lot of labor, that's all it is. One of the last steps would be any kind of metal polish. In this case we have Blue Magic, basically because it's available at AutoZone real cheap. Just take a little bit on the end. And our pad that we, Harbor Freight pad, buffing pad, and this we use all the time. Just get the material put in there. Now, if, for instance, you wanted to keep this from spinning, what I've done in the past is put a sheetrock screw just gently through here. You know, you never want to put this in a vise or anything, but in this case, I'm not in any rush. I can get in there. When I get done with this step, I'll be ready to do the buttons, and we'll have one disc done. And this would usually impart a really nice final finish. If you don't have any metal polish, or you're really cheaper than I am, toothpaste is fine. And once I dry it up, that should have a nice clean finish once I polish that up with a microfiber. Now this is really not a big trick, but because these discs are in really good shape, you don't need to put, I don't even need to put bolts in them. The sandpaper is enough that I can spin my buttons, make sure they all spin nice and free, which they do. If I find any that are stiff, all I'm going to have to do is just put a bolt in there. And I made a whole video of how to do this. Well, it's not a big deal because this is what probably other people have it out on YouTube also. The simple reason is it's common technology. That's anybody that does track days probably knows it. Anyway, the buttons all spin free. I just got to do a final cleanup on this. And what I like to do is use simple green. Get off any fingerprints, grease. Now you might be thinking, well, these discs are going to, well, the pads are going to reseat on this new surface the same way new piston rings do. It's going to take a little bit of a while, so the first day or two out, I'll be as gentle as I can on the brakes and then work up to it little by little by little. But basically, from what we had a couple hours ago to now, that's a monster upgrade. Now, just looking at this real quick, I'm just wondering if there's anybody out there that thinks that it's worth it or it isn't worth it. A couple hours of your time, almost no money, and I should have some really greatly improved braking. And all I got to do is convince somebody to do that other disc. You know what? Unfortunately, that somebody is me. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to pick this up. The next part of this is going to be, I hope we're going to get some time, and if all goes well, the next rainy day or day that it's too hot to ride, we'll get these installed and I'll let you know how they work. And thanks for watching.